All right, what's good? This is Marcus Fingaz back with another episode of the Secrets to Success podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about sync licensing. I share plugins and stuff that I'm using to create music for sync and trailers, and we talk about networking and all kinds of stuff, all related to music. And today we have the honor of being in the presence of Randy Ojeda, music lawyer. Randy, thank you for being here and sharing your insights from the music and legal perspective.
Yeah, Marcus, thanks for having me. I've been wanting to come on for a while, so I'm here. I am.
Yeah, yeah, and we're gonna get into a little bit of your story. Before we get all of that, full disclaimer: anything that you hear in this episode is not to be taken as legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer if you have specific legal questions. You can work with Randy and his team to address any specific legal questions. This is just insights from Randy's perspective and his journey. So do not take this as golden. And just run with it and try to sue Randy. So
Yeah. Thank you for that
yeah,
disclaimer, though. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. We
That is true.
need to throw it out there. So
Yeah.
I think let's just start like how did you get into like the law field with growing up? Is that like you always wanted to be a lawyer and you just stuck with it, or
A little bit. Yeah. I kind of, I wanted to be a lawyer when I was younger. And growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer too. But actually, I started playing music when I was in like my first band was in like sixth or seventh grade. We started a band, and then I started playing bass in that band, and then in high school had more bands, and did vocals for this metal band, and did a bunch of fun things in the music world, and toured, and got to release some records and stuff. So. Um, then when we got to college, most of my bandmates went to other colleges. So we kind of had to split up at that point. And then um, I kind of thought music was done for me. I thought I was gonna just focus on, I was getting good grades in college, and I got into a good law school, Loyola in Chicago, and moved up to Chicago, went to law school. And while I was in law school, I actually started managing a rapper named IDK, and started working with him, started managing other producers and rappers and bands, and just, built up this management company. So when I finished law school, I was like, I don't really know if I want to be a lawyer at this point. Like, I love management, I love what I'm doing. I'm just going to stick with that. And I did that for several years, and eventually got the attention of a distribution company called Symphonic Distribution, who um, made me an A&R there. So started doing A&R while still managing, and just doing the music thing. And then you know, still didn't still didn't do anything with my law degree. I was just focusing on the A&R and management side. And then the pandemic happened, and suddenly my very, very busy schedule, like most people's, became a very, very not busy schedule,
yeah, yeah,
So, all those years of working in management and in A&R, I started seeing and meeting a lot of other music attorneys, and seeing what they were doing, how they were moving. And honestly, like, not to throw shade at anybody in particular, but like, I just thought I could do it better. I didn't feel like they were serving the clients the way the clients should be served, and they weren't. Obviously, if you're Drake or you're Taylor Swift, you got your lawyers and you're
yeah.
straight. But the independent artists were falling through the cracks and not getting the support that they should be getting. You know,
Hmm.
so around the pandemic, I quit my job doing A&R, lessened my management roster, and then started this law firm. I took the bar exam, started this law firm, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow, wow, that's an incredible journey and
It is,
and
yeah.
path, and there's so many avenues we can go down that way. I would say like getting into it's also still fairly new, so you've been seeing a lot of changes over the last 5 years since the pandemic,
Yeah.
and getting into law. What are some of like the mistakes that you've been seeing from music creator perspective when they are signing contracts or trying to negotiate contracts and agreements?
Honestly, the biggest thing is that people just don't know that music lawyers or entertainment lawyers are a thing,
Yep.
Like, there's a lot of people who they'll get a deal, whether it be a big contract or a small contract, and they'll just, oh, my friend's a lawyer. He does,
Yeah.
divorces and traffic accidents, but I'm sure he can handle my
Yep.
recording contract, and then people get bad advice. If you're not seeing these deals day in and day out, like you really don't know. The law part is easy, right? Like
Yep.
any lawyer, if you pass the bar, if you've gone to law school, you can figure out music copyrights and stuff. Like it's really
Yep.
not that complicated, but it's really about understanding the relationship aspect and the what's fair, what's not fair, what's, quote unquote standard
Hmm.
in contracts. And when you see these deals day in and day out, you know how far you can push or how far, you can take certain clauses or certain,
Hmm.
aspects of the negotiation. And you just can't do that if you're not practicing in music. And I think
Yep.
I've got a really unique perspective because I did do A&R, I did management. I've worn those hats and I've seen the industry from that angle. So
Hmm.
a lot of other attorneys who have just been attorneys their whole career, they don't they don't know what it's like to be in the trenches with an
Yeah.
artist and deal with the drama and the stress and
Yeah.
everything that comes with being a manager, for young artists, or being, an A&R signing independent music. Like, it's, you got to figure out the nuances and the real like needs of the artist, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you determine those needs? Is it a conversation before you decide to work with the artist? Are there things where you just like, how does an artist know that they're ready for a lawyer? And how do you know that you're ready for that artist?
Yeah, so it's not just me saying this. So let me put that this way. But if you've ever read All You Need to Know About the Music Business,
Yeah.
the Donald Passman
Donald
book,
Passman.
which is
Yeah.
the music Bible. Donald Passman's a music lawyer too, so he's probably also biased. But
Mhm.
he says in that book, and he's very right, that the first person on your team should be a lawyer.
Mm.
And before you enter into a management deal, or even before you step up from a distro kid or DIY distributor into a distribution situation, like you really should have a lawyer on your team just to help you navigate that and help you make sure that your deals with whoever else is coming onto the team are straightforward and what you need. So
Yeah.
I would say that artists should look for a lawyer as soon as they possibly can. Like
Mhm.
whenever you decide to take this seriously and you're like, okay, this is my business now. It's not just a hobby. You should get a lawyer on the team. You
Yeah.
know.
Which is great advice, personally. Because, well, there's going to be, I'll have a rebuttal against that as well, but great
Yeah.
because my daughter is a sophomore at Spelman College in Atlanta, and she is studying to become an entertainment lawyer.
Amazing.
So I've been having great conversations with people like you and just sharing insights that I'm learning, to share with her on her journey to in that role. And when you say that the first person, and of course Donald says it, you can't get much better than from
Can't argue
the
with the
with
Don.
with the Don,
Yeah.
who has an incredible son also who has a sync library, but that's a whole other
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when you say the first person you should hire is a lawyer, how can an artist plan for that if they don't really have, lawyers cost money. Good lawyers
That is
cost
true.
money, cost
That
a
is
lot of
true.
money, and if they don't have sort of that income coming in, but then they have to bring a lawyer on, whether it's as on a retainer basis or monthly, or just every contract they negotiate, they have to also pay them, however many hundreds of thousands of dollars that they don't have.
Sure.
So how do they offset that? If that's the first person they should hire, but they don't really have the means to have that.
Yes. So most, I don't know about most attorneys actually, but for me, I definitely keep my fees pretty reasonable for
Okay.
independent artists because I know that they don't have a label paying for their legal costs, So
Yeah.
obviously I'm not gonna gouge you, out of your budget. Like I work with
Mhm.
budgets and make sure that, you're still getting the attention that you need and the support that you need, but you're not necessarily paying an arm and a leg. So
Mhm.
I actually have a legal subscription service, which is kind of new in
Hmm.
the industry where, it's not like a retainer where you pay a ton of money up front and then you bill against that. It's like you pay, kind of a set fee every month and you get certain amount of access to me and my team, questions answered, a couple meetings each
Okay.
month, that kind of thing. And, we can figure it out together. That's my whole thing is I'm very big on educating and empowering the artists themselves so that they
Mhm.
can walk in with confidence and help themselves. So with with the different options that I offer, whether it be like smaller fees or
Mhm.
the subscription option, I try to open it up to people who are new or just getting their feet wet in the industry and need that support, but don't necessarily have that budget. So I don't know how other attorneys do it, but that's how I look at it.
No, I've never heard of the subscription. It makes sense. Could artists theoretically, if they are concerned about budget, but they want to have at least 1 or 2 months sort of consult, could they do the subscription for 2 months and then cancel and then come back in a couple months if they have more questions?
Uh,
Or
I do ask for a 3 month minimum
okay,
commitment
okay,
for
okay.
the subscription, just because it is like if you price it out, and I don't want to
Mhm.
go into the pricing on this,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
if you price it out, it's a lot cheaper to do the subscription than it is to do
yeah. Like
individual
a one-on-one.
services.
Yeah,
So I don't want people just signing up for a month, taking advantage of that, and
and then
then
leave.
quitting.
But they
So
could do the 3 month thing.
they
Sign up
could
for
do
three
three
months, take a
months
month off, do three more months.
take some
Okay,
time off, hire me again when they need more time.
that's smart.
That's totally fine. Luckily, most of our subscribers stay with us for,
Yeah.
as long as they can. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's
yeah.
actually a smart way to sort of approach um and to offset that worry of costs for, legal, especially great legal advice because
Yeah.
terrible legal advice is easy to find.
That is true. That is true. And the other thing is like, I don't want people to be like, be afraid to pick up the phone and call me.
hmm
If they know that, like, with a lot of attorneys, every time you call them on the phone, they're billing you,
You're
they're
billing.
billing you, they're billing you. I'd rather people know that they have a team member there that, they can call and ask questions when they need it. And they don't have to think about, is this question worth the fee? No,
hmm
just ask the question. Let's get you working right. Let's get your business right and move from there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And because I focus on sync licensing and sort of trailer music, do you deal a lot with agreements in the sync space for either artists working with other artists or producers, and then also working with sync libraries, sync agents, production music libraries, music supervisors, things like that?
Yeah, all of the above. So
Okay,
I do a lot of sync work. I was very involved in sync even at symphonic and
symphonic.
working there, and then it just continued to be part of that world, if you will. So I have a Discord page that
Oh,
or a
nice.
Discord community where people join, and we have a sync channel there where if
Oh,
I get a
nice.
brief, because I get briefs all the time.
Yep,
So I like to share those in the Discord and open it up to people in that community if they want to submit to this brief. Send
oh,
me the
that's smart.
tracks. We'll do it. We'll work it out. You know what I mean? So I do end up facilitating a lot of deals that way, through just my own outreach, or then also people coming to me and saying, "Hey, I just got this sync. Here's the contract. What do you think?"
hmm Oh,
So
oh, nice.
yeah, I love the sync world. I think it's like, one of the sync in music syncing and synchronization is like one of
hmm
the things that got me to be such a passionate music fan, just like
Yeah,
mic drops from different uh or record drops or whatever from different movies and TV shows where I've just fallen in love with songs
yeah.
because of that, and it's like I love to see songs that I love back in other, used in other mediums.
Yeah, yeah, same. You mentioned the Discord. Is that Discord only for your clients, or is that open to the public, or is there
No, that's
application
open to
process?
everybody.
Okay,
Yeah, anybody can join the Discord. It is I don't really share the link publicly, so DM me, reach out to me if you want to join and I'll
okay,
send you the link, but it's open to anybody. And we have it's not a massive community. We have a couple hundred people in there, but there's a lot of artists, a lot of producers, and other people within the industry, including some sync agents and music supervisors. So it's a great community, and I'm still, kind of growing it and cultivating the community, if you will. But
yeah.
it it's really rewarding, and it's a place where maybe you do just have one question for me,
hmm
and you don't need to hire me, you don't need to bill my, you don't need to book my time or whatever. Join the Discord, ask the question. I'll answer it if I can. If other people will jump in and answer and help you, gain the knowledge that you want to gain. It's a really supportive community.
That's smart. And I'll make sure to include a link to your social media so people can DM you for that link to the
Hell
Discord.
yeah.
Um, so on those agreements and things that you are working with on artists, are there any uh, sort of red flags, any things that artists should be aware of? Obviously, on the sync side, we're looking at exclusive, not exclusive, perpetuity, all these different things that
Yeah.
artists might not be familiar with when uh, and a lot of the sync agreements are not kind of the ones I've seen are not really long, 2 pages, 3 pages, 5 pages, maybe max.
Yeah.
So are there things that artists should be looking out for? Should they push back if a library is like take it or leave it? This is, industry standard, which never really a
Right, right.
thing.
Which there's no
No
such
such
thing
thing.
as
Yeah.
industry standard,
Yeah.
With sync specifically, one of the things I always tell artists to be careful with is the usage. So like,
Mm,
how is your song going to be used? How long is it going to be used for? And then, you should be paid accordingly. Like if
yep.
if it's a theme song, or it's an end credits, something like that, you should be getting paid a lot more than if it's 30 seconds or 15 seconds in the background of a bar scene or something. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So you need to be careful about how it's being used and try to negotiate the fee accordingly. And that's the second thing is you can negotiate. Like I know people get
Mm,
scared because they're like, "Oh, they'll just move on to the next song." But if they're locked in on your song, like there's room to negotiate. Don't get
yep.
crazy, but you don't always have to take the first offer, and just making a counter offer is not going to necessarily scare people away.
Yeah.
It can, but then you got to know what you're worth.
Yeah, yeah. I did music a couple years ago for Disneyland attraction, and it's an
Oh,
intro to a documentary that was telling the story of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass before you go see this attraction that's called Great Moments with
great
Mr.
moments with
Lincoln.
Mr.
Yeah.
Lincoln. Yeah,
Uh,
I'm
s-
so
Wait, you
the
did,
shout out.
was that your
Uh,
contract? I'm about
no, no, it
about
was
to
not my
say.
contract, but my first job out of high school and into college, once I was in college, was at Disney World.
Oh wow.
So I keep
Oh
this
wow.
on my desk, my little Disney
Oh,
World
that's
name tag,
insane.
as a reminder
So you are a
of
cast member, a former
I am
cast
I am
member.
I am a former cast member. I will forever be
Forever be
a
one.
yeah, forever
Oh
be
man,
one.
I'm
So
definitely gonna send that to Disney. Yeah, I was working on this music, and they wanted like a choir at the intro of this sort of video that you watch before you go see this animatronic show,
right.
and I was like, they gave me a budget for making the music, and then I was like, I'm gonna need a little extra to like get a choir involved, and they were like, no, it is what it is. So I tried to negotiate a little bit more, but
Yeah.
sometimes the budget is the budget. But
Yeah. But come on,
again,
Disney, like you could
Yeah,
stretch
like it's
that
Disney.
budget. Like, come on,
Um,
man.
but no, we
Yeah.
figured it out, and it
Yeah.
was incredible. And it was my first time working with them, so I didn't want to burn that bridge, ever.
Yeah,
I never
yeah.
want to burn that bridge. But it's
No, no, that's
yeah,
like my dream right there, is to have something in a Disney park,
yeah.
like whether it's something I facilitated or my own music or whatever, like I've always dreamed of that. So shout out to you for getting that opportunity. And Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln's a classic attraction. So that's
It
that's
is,
really cool.
and I walked by it so many times because it's the one that people
Yeah,
walk by, but people stop
it's
by
true.
there, and this
Yeah,
right at the entrance of the park, and it was incredible opportunity. I just never thought of having music. That actually came from just me sharing music in a group that I'm part of, and I released a neoclassical trailer project, and some people in that group were working on this attraction as part of the Disney 100 celebration, and
amazing.
they were updating it to tell the story, and they were looking for a black composer who wouldn't charge Chris Bowers or Terrence Blanchard rates, and
Fair enough. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
released a project right on time, and they're like, hey, do you think you can make some music for this? And I was like, yeah, and yeah, it was just an incredible experience, and definitely the longest contract that I've gotten to date, but
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah.
but I did definitely look over every word, and so on these agreements, I know you said to look out for a lot of these things. Actually, have you heard of the acronym DUE? Do?
Do I have? I'm trying to think about what
What it means.
exactly it means.
I'll help you. So
Yeah.
from what I where I saw it, it was some interview, and I wish I could remember the person, or this was years ago. But the D stands for duration.
Okay.
The U stands for usage,
Usage.
and the E is for exclusivity. So when you
Ah,
consider all
I
of
like
those
that.
components that can help you figure out, what should I be charging if they're only going to use, 10 seconds. Sometimes duration can be tricky because I look at my BMI statements and I see some things that's 10 seconds, but it's getting 50, $60, and then other things are 10 seconds and it's like 5 cents. It's like, wait, what's
Right.
that? So it
Yeah.
depends on that. The usage, of course, as you mentioned, theme songs, end credits, opening credits, things like that. And then exclusivity. Is it going to be exclusive to this company or this brand? Is it exclusive to a car company for the next 6 months or the next year? So all
Right.
of that should uh, affect the price. And of
And
course, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and that is something to think about too, is not only, because obviously when you think of exclusivity, you think, okay, this song can only be used for this, but a lot of times exclusivity is like you said, like you can only give this song to this one soda company or this
Yeah.
one car company, and
Yep.
then you can't give it to any competitors for a year or two
Yep.
years or ever. So um, definitely something to look out for. I like that do acronym. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, yeah. So you can credit me, but I wish I could credit the right person.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
heard it, and it
yeah.
was
We'll
another
we'll run
composer.
it down the line.
We'll
Yeah.
track it down eventually. We have to get to this part of the conversation, and you know what I'm about to get to this AI stuff. I'm sure
Yeah.
I know you've seen a lot. We've seen a lot just in general um, over the last few months with Suno, Udio, of
Hmm.
course, with some big producers doing some stuff with these platforms. I actually got an offer from one of those platforms that I had to
Nice.
think about, but I denied it. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't do this right now. But if the number was higher, I probably would. And some people will take that deal. But there's
Sure.
this evolving thing with AI and AI generated music. So how is the legal side of music or copyright law sort of dealing with AI currently? It could change tomorrow, but right now, how is it?
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it's always changing. And right now it's almost like they're not dealing with it, but they should be. I
Yeah,
mean, the most recent actual like trademark federal trademark ruling has been that when it comes to AI at least that you need a level of human authorship in order for it to be copyrightable.
yeah,
So basically, if you're just they said specifically that just prompting the AI is not enough of a human intervention for it to
mm,
for it to be considered copyrightable. So with AI it gets tricky. What how far are we taking it? Like some people are
mm,
using AI as like tools to separate tracks or something like
yep,
that. Other people are using AI to create a whole song that sounds like a Metallica song or whatever.
yeah,
Like so it's the use of AI is very different depending on who's doing it. And there's not really a lot of law around hey, you stole my AI track. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
there's I'm sure that's coming and there's going to be litigation around it and rulings around it. But, right now it's tough. And the other thing that people are worried about with copyright and AI, especially when it comes to sync, is if right now say it might be legal to use Suno or whatever platform to, um, to create work, right? And you
hmm
can you can license that in a film. But what if the law changes in 5 years or
yep,
10 years, and now you have to either go and like recut a movie or a commercial or something, or you need
hmm
to, um, negotiate new rights or whatever. Like,
hmm
it's like I said, it's just very complicated. So if you're an artist getting into sync right now and you want to use AI, I would really recommend against it. Just because
yep,
in a lot of these briefs in particular, they're saying blatantly like no AI tracks, no
yeah,
AI involvement. They don't want to see it. They don't want to take the risk. And I understand where they're coming from, you know.
yeah,
And I understand the people that want to use AI too. Like, I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel like AI should be, doing my taxes and like helping
hmm
me wash my dishes and stuff and not like
yeah, yeah,
not like creating art for me.
art,
But,
yeah, yeah,
I understand, you know, people had these same concerns when sampling started or when,
yeah,
people started using MIDI keyboards or whatever. Like I
yeah,
get both sides of the table here, but
yeah,
um,
yeah.
just for right now, if you're submitting music to sync, if you're, following up on briefs, if that's what's, driving you as an artist, then try to stay
Mhm.
away from AI as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah. I will say one thing about the ethical use of AI because
Mm.
there are ethical uses, and a great use case is I don't know if you know the rapper Beanie Siegel. Um,
Yeah.
recently, I don't know if he dropped it or if he's working on it, but working on a new album or dropped a new album recently, where he used AI to clone his voice so that it was sort of like he was shot and his vocal cords messed up. He can't like rap anymore. So he used
Yeah.
AI to sort of clone his voice and to release an album that way. So I think there are those use cases, but it was the artist giving permission to do that as opposed to, some other person or company just
Yeah.
analyzing his records and then making a new record or making a style and the likeness of that artist. And then the other side, have you
Sure.
heard of the AI artist who just signed a record deal?
I did. I can't remember their name, but I know they
Um,
signed a pretty big deal.
yeah, I think it
Um,
was $2 or $3 million for an
oh,
AI artist, and I'm
yeah.
just like, how does that even make sense? Where does the money go? Maybe to the prompter, or maybe to I don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
baffled by that too, to be honest, so
yeah,
I and it's the kind of thing where I think it's going to be a generational thing, like,
mhm,
this next generation that's basically being
yeah,
born in an AI world and
yeah,
already so familiar with AI and use it for everything, like they might not care that
yeah,
something was made with AI, or they might not care that somebody's an AI artist or whatever. They just want the music, but I definitely think, for our generation and others, like, you can, you still want that authentic connection between you and the music,
mhm.
you know.
Which sort of leads to the next point because a lot of music creators, in sync, and also just in general, they make music. They don't really register to protect it. They put it
True.
out online, put it on albums. They get synced, without getting registered. So let's say if a song is somehow, uh, copied and a big mega producer shares, an AI created version, and that version sounds exactly like the song that a producer made. What is, are there any legal steps that a creator can take, to address that?
Yeah, I mean, if it's exactly the same, right? If they use
Yeah.
AI to like recreate the exact same thing,
Mhm.
um, you probably have an argument. But again, like, if the AI work is not copyrightable, then
Yeah.
what are you suing for? You know what I mean? Like, that's where it gets complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I,
Yeah. It's
I haven't run into that situation yet. I'm sure it's coming,
yeah.
but it'll be interesting to see like how a court feels about that. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and at the time of this recording, yesterday was Music Advocacy Day for the Recording Academy, where, a lot of us in the Recording Academy, got to
Yeah.
speak to Congress people and representatives to, um, get their sponsorship and support for some of these, laws, including the No Fakes Act, which is, a law that, we're trying to hopefully get support for, that will address some of these legal issues and ethical concerns with as it comes to AI and cloning people's voice, and things
Yeah.
like that.
No,
Um,
super important. And yeah, shout out to the Recording Academy. I'm a member as well. And
yeah,
they do a lot of great work about, around music advocacy.
yeah, yeah. A lot that I didn't even realize until I got into it. It's like, oh wait,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's more than just a Grammy, so it definitely is. That should be
No,
one of the taglines.
it really should be, because yeah, they do a lot of education, a lot of advocacy, and even like, they have resources for mental health and other things that
Yeah,
artists need. So
yeah,
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 shout out to the Academy.
yeah. I had no. Actually, I have a. I guess I don't know if all this stuff is like off the radar, but I have a hearing test next week because it's like, oh wait, they offer
Hey,
like a lot of free services, like you said, the mental health, and it's like, hey, you can sign up to get your, screening of your hearing, and I was like,
that's
wow, why
super
not? If
important.
it's there, it's free. So yeah, um, definitely incredible to be part of communities, um, like that in this sort of space. I have a question that's sort of, uh not been plaguing me. I know some producers, so I'm a producer. I make instrumental. I usually get an artist, on the instrumental, and then we shop things around. Sometimes I have instrumentals that I just make, in case,
Hmm.
for opportunities. I have like a bank of R&B and hip hop and pop and all these different styles, um,
Cool.
and occasionally I pitch those instrumentals to opportunities, for the sync space. Uh, so let's say I pitch it to an opportunity that's only looking for instrumentals, but then eventually I get an artist on it. If the instrumental lands from when I pitched it before, does that artist get a claim to the full song now if they are now part of it?
Um, Good question. I would say no, especially if you have already registered the instrumental work as an instrumental.
Mhm.
Um, you would probably still have that claim. It also depends on the timing too.
Yeah,
So like,
yeah,
you know, if you license this instrumental first and then it
mhm,
became a song with an artist later, that's
yeah,
different than if you made this song along with this
with
artist
the
and then you
artist,
took
and
the
then yeah,
vocals out
yeah,
and slid the instrumental through. You know what I mean? So, um, the lawyer answer, of course, it depends.
it
You
depends.
know,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
really it really depends on a lot of factors, but that could kind of go either way.
yeah, yeah. I've talked to some producers where they say they just, they charge the artists basically they sell the not sell the instrumental, but they charge them to have this instrumental, and then the song they both own 50/50 instrumental
Right,
and full
right.
song. So
And
there's different ways. Yeah.
yes, and the agreement that you have between the artist and the producer is what's going to really decide
Yeah.
who owns what and how, you know, how that goes.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're talking about sort of the negotiating on the sync side, can you negotiate the fees for like bigger projects, let's say commercials, ads, films, as opposed to obviously like reality TV, which tends to do sort of with a lower scale of fees?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can, usually the bigger projects, like they usually come with their best foot forward in terms of the budget.
Yeah.
So there might not be a lot of room there, but I would say like if they're coming in really low, and
Mhm.
it's a bigger company or whatever, like, at least try to counter. Don't just necessarily go with the first offer. But um it really, again, I'm sorry to use the
Yeah.
lawyer cop
It's
out, but
all
it
it's
really
all
depends.
depends. Yeah.
It all
Yeah.
depends on who you are, what your song is, how well it fits in,
Mhm.
in with the music cue. And,
Yeah.
sometimes there's situations where like a supervisor just has to have this song. Like
Yeah.
there's no way around it. They have to have it. You get a little bit more leverage in that situation than, if they're picking from a list of 100 artists, and sometimes it's hard to know, whether they're doing that or not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
It, in your, I know it all depends. All these questions depend.
yeah,
Is there a good situation for an artist to consider a case where it's a work for hire, where they make the music and the company or something owns it,
right.
or if it's like a buyout? Are there situations where obviously if it's like $1 million deal, then it's a no-brainer,
Sure.
but where those options are advantageous for an artist to accept?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's always situations where that could make sense for the
Mhm.
artist, especially in a situation where you're asked to create custom music as a
Yeah.
work for hire. Like, yes, it would be nice to, get back end royalties on something like that. But, if it's like, if you're making, a theme song or something, a jingle for a commercial or something like that, and it's very specific to what it is, it might make sense to get sell the exclusive, but ask for a higher fee than you normally would if it was non-exclusive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to that do acronym,
Yes, yes,
if you remember,
exactly. Back to do.
back to do. I like that. When I worked with an artist who we did a lot of music and it was exclusive to a library, but then after like maybe 2 years, the artist was like, yeah, I just asked for the music back. And in this case, there was no uh reversion clause in the agreement.
Hmm.
But um what is sort of the your take on that? Like as artists, we want our music to go someplace that can,
Yeah.
hopefully generate some type of income or at least be pitched. Um, is it good for an artist to sort of argue for getting their music back, even if they didn't sign a reversion clause, if it's been, I don't know, 2, 3 years and nothing's happened? And I know there's a give and take because I
Yeah.
just landed my first Netflix trailer, which was I've been working with this company for 3 years and we just got our first trailer. So
Yeah.
some things take time.
They
Um,
do. Yeah. And
a lot
and
of things
and
everything takes
everything takes time. And
time.
as you know, like sync really is a long game. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you just think you're gonna throw out of, some options or some
mhm,
catalog and then you're gonna get all these syncs right away, it's just not gonna happen like
yeah.
that. You
Some people
know.
do, which is I'm like,
Some people do.
how?
Yeah, yeah.
Like
You
you
might
just
get
got
you
this
might
thing
get
yesterday.
lucky.
Yeah,
You might get lucky for
like
sure.
the
But
few, the 1%. Yeah,
yeah, I think what it is like you really should vet whatever library or whatever, sync agent or whoever you're handing catalog over to. You
yeah,
really got to make sure that they're actively working it, especially if it's exclusive, and that they have, your interests at heart. So
mhm,
because there's a lot of, around honestly around the pandemic, like when like sync kind of exploded a little bit because
yep.
you know because people weren't touring or whatever, so artists were trying to find new streams of revenue, and then at the same time, like, everybody was at home watching Netflix all day, so it was like
Mhm,
this is like the perfect storm of let's get more music synced.
yep.
So a lot of companies kind of came out of the woodwork, and a lot of music executives started these sync companies, and
Mhm,
they don't really have the relationships or the capacity to even pitch half the things that they
yeah,
have
yeah,
access to. So if a few years go by and it's really not working,
Hmm.
they normally won't tell you exactly what they've pitched you for and when they've
Yep.
pitched you, but if you can get them to give you a general idea of like how many times have you pitched my catalog,
Yep.
and see what that answer is, and if it's zero, maybe it makes sense for
Yeah.
you to just mutually part ways because obviously it's not a fit for them either,
Hmm.
but I've talked to agents and people who have been, like pitching an artist catalog, once a month, twice a month, three times a month for 4 years and have never
Hmm.
gotten anywhere with it, but
Yeah.
there's trying. And, it just takes that perfect moment for something to latch on,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And also what I've seen is if you have a decent catalog in some of these libraries, once that one thing hits, they go back and look into, oh, this person has 50 other songs or ideas that could work on these other projects, and it becomes a thing, and then you start getting those. So
Absolutely.
there are not that it happens in every case or in many cases, but there are possibilities on that side of things. Should an artist then go, like, let's say they are making a lot of music, should they register with the copyright office? A lot of times they don't have time. Sometimes the company might handle all that, but
Hmm.
um, for me personally, I make anywhere from like 300 to 500 uh, songs or tracks per year. And
Yeah.
that can add up. That's a lot of money to register,
That would
with the
be
copyright
that.
office.
Yes, with the fees alone,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be an insane amount. I would recommend, at the very least, copyright anything that you're like releasing on the DSPs. If you can. One way you can do it is now the Copyright Office does allow you to register a group of works.
Mhm.
So if you're releasing kind of singles all throughout the year, maybe
Yeah.
collect those singles and at the end of the year as an album, put it out again and then register that album through with the Copyright
Mm.
Office. So then you're only paying the fee one time as opposed to paying fees for every individual single, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do not register with the Copyright Office, and
Hmm.
most of the time it's fine, but there's going to be that one situation where you
Yeah.
really would have benefited from
From
copywriting
registering.
and
Yeah.
then it's too late, and part of it has to do with just the monetary damages. So,
Hmm.
if you already have something registered, right? And then there's copyright infringement, you can get what's called statutory damages, which are
Hmm.
upwards of like $250,000.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have it registered and somebody copy infringes on your copyright, you can only get what's called actual damages, which
Okay.
is like a math problem that they figure out where it's like, okay, you
I thought
only
I thought you said a meth problem.
no,
I
no,
was
no,
like,
a
oh,
math
okay,
problem,
yeah, I'm
mathematics,
with
all
you. I'm
right,
like, yeah.
mathematics here, all right. They figure out, like how much money you actually lost by this copyright infringement,
Mhm.
and chances are, if you're a small independent artist, it's not going to be $250,000.
Yeah.
So and it also just makes your claim so much stronger if you already have it registered and it's already in the Copyright Office. It's just like I said, it's something, technically you should do it with everything that you do.
Yeah.
Obviously you got to prioritize, because it is expensive, but um, yeah, definitely something to do. And a service that I offer actually is, I'll copyright your music for you if you want to pay me to do that. But what I typically do when an artist comes to me and says like, I've never copyrighted anything, or I've never registered with a PRO or whatever, I don't know how
Yeah.
to register my music. Like I always tell them like, book, an hour consultation with me and
Oh,
we'll
that's
sit
smart.
down together and we'll walk through how to do these
See.
registrations, right?
Okay.
And then hopefully you will be educated and empowered to be able to then register those things on your own. So then rather than
Mhm.
having to pay attorney's fees and filing fees, you're just
Yeah.
paying the
You're just
filing
paying.
fees. And because you don't need to be an attorney necessarily to copyright something. Like
Yeah.
it's I'm not going to say it's not complicated because there can be some nuances, but
Hmm.
if you learn how to do it for your own music, you can do it time and time again every time you release something. And I like to show creators how they can do that, so like they don't have to spend an arm and a leg hiring somebody to do it for them.
Yeah, and not just arm and a leg, but a time and an effort. Because
Yeah,
let's say you make a song, making the song for most is the easy part.
yeah,
making the song, have it done. But then you got to spend another 1, 2 hours doing the admin stuff. So I make a song. If I'm gonna release it, then I gotta, if it's an album, I'm gonna put it on DistroKid, make sure I have all that stuff there. And then
Hmm.
if it's depending on where it's going, if it's going to sync, you might not do this, but then you got to do content ID for YouTube, and then
Right.
you got to go to MLC, which is, I believe, only in the US. It's like, okay, what if I want
Hmm.
to collect international stuff? If there's, stuff that's going to be happening international, then you have your BMI, ASCAP, CSAC, and then Sound Exchange.
Yeah.
If it's like you have these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 places to
Yep.
register your
Yep.
music, and like how does an artist know even what to do with the music once they're done making it if you have 10 options to register it with, and
Right.
you're just like, how do I collect all of this stuff, and I don't even know where all this stuff is.
Yeah, I actually created it's called the Indie Artist Legal Checklist,
Ooh,
and
okay.
it's on the website. It's under free resources, and you can download this, and it's just a quick page that is literally a checklist for like, okay, I release a song, this is what I need to do. Post release is what I need to do before release, et cetera, et cetera. So you can use that resource. You can hire somebody like me for a consultation. I'll walk you through, the process, like I just said. Or this is a really good argument for maybe it makes sense to have a publishing administrator,
Hmm.
and have you'll give up a percentage, but you're gonna have somebody doing a lot of these registrations for you. And there's even some DIY pub admin companies like Centric or Song Trust,
Yeah.
these other companies where you don't have to sign a big deal and have a big catalog. Like you can just sign up for this service and they'll take their percentage, but
Hmm.
then you just upload your work to them and they'll handle the registrations and collecting international royalties and things like that. So you know I'm a big advocate for doing it yourself and just
Yeah.
setting aside the time and doing the admin on your own. But if you're really releasing a lot of music
Yeah.
and you just don't have the time for the admin, like that's what a publisher can do for you. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Which is actually an issue that I have with some of the sync libraries, because some of them uh, don't use Disco, which is,
Yeah.
that might
Shout out to
be the
Disco.
industry standard, I would say, if there
Yeah.
was anything that is industry standard for cataloging music. And shout out to Disco.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's some companies that don't use Disco. They have their own things that they set up. So now you have to do another step where it takes, could take you another 10, 15 minutes to get your song on their platform and registered with
Right.
their system, in addition to everything else, instead of just sending like a Disco link that already has all the information embedded. So all this stuff, yeah, for in my case, like I'm not there yet, but yes, to hire someone or to work with a company that will do all that for me, so that I don't spend an extra 2 hours doing all the registration. I can make, you know, another song in that time. And
Exactly. Exactly.
sort of do sort of like a virtual assistant type thing, and have it maybe with AI, have all that automated. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. But you did bring up a good point. In general, when it comes to sync, you really need to stay organized, and you really need to, if you're using Disco particularly, like make sure your metadata is all filled out.
yeah,
The your ISRC codes, your PRO information,
yeah,
songwriter information, all of that should be filled out because Disco makes it so easy to share that with the people that need it.
yeah,
So take that extra step. Don't just throw your work on SoundCloud or whatever and then start sending
mhm,
that around. Like, I do
yeah,
recommend Disco. There are others, but use a catalog management system or at the very least have a spreadsheet with all
yeah,
of this data listed out, because it gets way more complicated the bigger your
yeah,
catalog
yeah.
gets. So start early, start tracking that all super early, and then, you'll have a lot less problems later.
Yeah, I'm just not just, but over the last couple of years, because I make a lot of music per year, and the way I was sort of structuring things before getting into sync, it was like terrible. So when I go back to some of those old ideas and old tracks that are syncable, but it's
Yeah.
like I had things spread out so much, like I had like stems in a different folder, and now I keep everything like in one Logic folder session for the one song. And even on Disco, I just learned. I think last week I had a conversation with a library owner that I work with, and um, he was like, "Yeah, I don't see the metadata on your Disco." And I was like, it's there. In like the no, he's like, I didn't see the PRO info. And I was like, yes, they're in the comment
Hmm.
section. But I guess you have to also make sure that whoever you're sending it to has whatever version of disco they need to see, or that you know what they can see so that you can put the right information in those fields. Because not everyone can
I
see
see.
every field in disco, which I didn't know. I was like, hey, I put it where I put it, and I thought everyone could see
Yeah.
it.
I
So
didn't know that
depending,
either, honestly.
yeah.
That's yeah.
So I'm learning things every day. So he was like, no, can you just put the PRO in the? I think he said just put it in the grouping field, and everyone can see that. I was like, okay, yeah, I didn't know that. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's things
Yeah.
that I'm learning about disco, and I've been using it for about 2 or so years, and it's definitely a great platform.
Yeah.
Every music supervisor I talk to, a lot of them prefer disco. It's easy. They're just like a lot of them don't even look at the song until they are searching their catalog. So if you send them a list, they'll ingest it in their list, and then when they search for the metadata or search for a certain lyric or
Yeah.
so I try to put as much information as I can in there,
Yeah.
even down to a black composer, because that has gotten me opportunities. Or,
Sure. Yeah.
sometimes being where you're from. Um,
Yeah.
I saw a brief a while ago, actually about a month or two ago, they were looking for producers and composers from who are HBCU alum. So you just have no
Oh,
idea
wow. Yeah, yeah.
what what from your journey or path could lead to an opportunity in the SIG space.
Yeah, and I know this isn't an ad for Disco or anything, but
It
shout
is
out to
now.
them.
It is
It is
now.
now. Yeah, yeah. Disco,
Don't worry,
cut the check.
I'm
Cut
gonna
the
clip
check.
this
Get
up.
it. Yeah, come on. But yeah, the last time I was in New York, I ended up at this party, and somehow I started talking to some people there, and it was like the entire disco team, like Aaron and all of them,
Yeah.
and like the customer success team and product team, and like the whole disco
Mhm.
team was just hanging out there at this
Yeah.
bar, and I was like, I love everything you guys are doing, and they've been super helpful with any questions I've had and any issues I've had. So, shout out to Disco all around.
Shout out to Disco. Shout out
Yeah.
to who's the founder? I think it's Carl something from Australia, by the way. So
Yeah, yeah.
it was discovered in Australia by music supervisors. So it's
There you
by
go.
music supervisors for music supervisors, and that's what the great platform is about. And I happen to I had a conversation with I want to say what's his name, Jared from Disco a
Cool.
while ago, and yeah, they're making updates also like daily, not daily, but often. They're listening to
Yeah.
their
No,
users, and
they're
they're
they're they're iterating on the product like
yeah.
very rapidly, which is great, and they really do take in feedback and add in
Yep.
the stuff that people are asking for.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I really like. So, speaking of metadata, what is your take? I started seeing this maybe last year. I'm sure it existed before then, where some companies are infringing on. There's some companies that'll take publishing share. I get that, but some of them are now infringing on the writer share, stating that maybe the television production company or the television company is taking some of the publishing now.
Right.
Is that a thing? Typically, I stay away from giving up writer share if they didn't help write anything on the song or
Yeah.
produce the
No,
song.
no,
So,
yeah, yeah. You should
um,
never give up your writer's share
yeah,
unless they're a writer.
yeah,
But I was just going over a contract with a client
mhm.
yesterday, and this sync company, who shall remain nameless, they wanted, they basically wanted to retitle the works and
yeah,
register them with the
mm,
PROs. So if people aren't familiar with that, retitling is like, let's say your song is called Song 1 2, they're gonna register it as Song 1 3,
yeah,
and it's gonna be there. Basically it allows the sync company to get your writer's share, because they're going to then take from the whole thing as opposed to just collecting on the publisher's share. So you need to be careful, specifically with retitling.
mm,
It's something it's almost always a red flag for me. And it used to be more necessary kind of back
yeah,
in the day, but now, like, the tagging and song linking and stuff is so much more sophisticated
yeah,
that the PRO registration should be your own PRO registration, and that's what they should be working off of, and not retitling and sending out quote unquote new songs
yeah,
you know
yeah. That's good to know. I work with one company, and I think they do that. I don't give them much music because of that, and I don't have like a billion placements with them. So
yeah,
it's easy to like not give them a lot. But I want to say their argument was, at least at the time, because I think they've been existence for a while, is that it helps them. It's actually a terrible argument now that I think about it. Track
yeah,
when it has
yes,
that name that they put on it.
yeah, because a lot of times, like, they'll use like an identifier
Yeah.
code, so it'll
Mhm.
be like song A dash 1 2 3 4 5 or
Yeah.
whatever, and every song will have a different code. And I see the argument for,
Hmm.
oh, it allows us to track it better. But like I said, tracking 20 years ago and
Yep.
tracking now are
Different.
so different, that it's just not necessary anymore. So
Yep.
look out for that in your sync deals. If somebody's asking to retitle, and they won't say specifically that it's being retitled, they'll word it
Yep.
differently, but keep an eye out on that, and be careful if you're gonna sign up for a
Yeah.
deal
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've had on the other side of it, there are cases where retitling is necessary. For
Sure.
example, I work with an exclusive library, and they're like, "Hey, we have to retitle this track because we have that title in our catalog already, so we can't have two of the same title on
Sure.
like PRO from our catalog." So there are sort of the other side of it, but yeah, definitely look out if they're trying to take writer share,
Yes,
any
because that's
percentage. But
usually that's
yeah,
usually why it's they're doing it, is so that they can collect off the full
yeah,
share, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
What if they so I know there's some companies that offer, these are, I call them like the holy grail of sync companies, that offer sort of a uh demo fee or upfront fee. They're few and far between now, but let's say they give you, $100 or $200 to make a song. And in some cases they also pay to have like a, quarter or 10% of writer share.
yeah,
Is that a something that you have come across?
I have, and yeah, I mean, if you're getting money,
Yeah.
if they're paying you, um, you got to figure out if that, five,
It's worth it.
10, whatever percent is worth it.
Yeah.
But the one thing though that you definitely need to stay away from is when they're charging you to pitch stuff,
Oh,
because
we
I've
haven't even
seen that
talked about that.
scam
Yeah.
so much, especially like on threads and
Yeah.
on the internet, where people are like, hey, you know I'll get you a guaranteed placement if you pay me $100. It's like, that's
Mhm.
not reality.
Yeah.
Stay
Yeah.
away from anything like that. If they're asking you to pay them, it's
Yeah.
probably not a good idea.
Yeah, and this it's even worse. So I've worked with way too many libraries over the last 3 years. I've probably worked with 40-ish libraries off and on. Like
Wow.
they have at least one song in their catalog of mine.
Yeah, I'd
Um,
love to see the
uh,
list of that. I'm always looking out for new libraries.
well, I'll tell you the gift and the curse. A lot of them were new libraries.
Hmm.
About a quarter of them didn't last longer than a year or two. I
Hmm.
got my music back, but they, like you said, the pandemic, people got into sync. I got into sync during the pandemic, and wanted to work with a lot of libraries. A lot of them were minority owned because I gravitated towards minority owned libraries, and they would reach out and say, "Hey, I'm starting a library. You want to do 5, 10 tracks or whatever." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Let's see what happens." And yeah, a lot of them didn't last longer than a
Yeah,
year. They might have thought it was another get rich quick scheme, or they couldn't figure out um, where what path to take, or they didn't plan for 3, 4, 5 years to start seeing
right.
the upside of this thing, which is um, what sort of what sync is. But a lot of these agencies, um, I'm trying to remember where I was going to go with that before I went on that tangent. They're yeah, I forgot. A lot of them are. I lost it. I lost it.
It's all good.
Okay,
It's all
we'll get it
good.
back. We'll get it back. If I
We'll
don't
get
think
it
about it,
back.
I'll think about it.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about sort of the um split sheets. So uh I know there's artists who, I typically do what's called Nashville splits, which you might be familiar with.
Hmm.
Um on original songs. So if I work with the artist, 50-50 split. Sometimes if they bring like another writer, I might do three-way, or I might just say, hey, if I ask that artist specifically to work on a project, it's 50-50. If they bring in like two other songwriters, I'm like, you gotta split that with your 50 your way. But if I ask like
Yeah.
2 or 3 artists to work on something, or we we collectively decide to work, I typically don't go more than four. Sometimes it push to five, but I try not to get into those numbers. Um, have you seen like weird splits with like I will say on covers I do it differently, cover songs, because the
Hmm.
artist isn't
Sure.
writing lyrics. um but as far as producers, obviously in the record business, producers aren't getting 50% of a song.
Yeah.
But in sync, it's like I'm doing the mixing, typically mastering, typically the pitching, doing all the work for 50%. I know some producers that take more, they take 60 or 70 because they're doing all of that. What is sort of your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's whatever you can negotiate,
Yeah.
and whatever makes sense. And like you said, if you're doing the admin, you're doing, a bulk of the work in addition to
Mm.
writing the song, yeah, maybe it does make sense for you to take more than 50, you
Yep.
know. It's not always the Three Musketeers approach,
Yep.
one for all and all for one. Like sometimes you got to look out for number one. And it does get complicated, especially like with pop stars and like larger artists where you'll have,
Hmm.
five or six producers, three or four songwriters, and the mixer wants points and the engineers want points. And, it can get down to the point where like you're only getting like a few points on a record,
Yeah.
but um yeah, I again, it's really whatever you can negotiate, and there's no real standard behind it. But the main point I think is to actually use split sheets and actually get this in
Hmm.
writing and figure it out. Like whatever percentage it's going to be, get it in writing before you leave the session. You know,
Yep.
right? Just fill out the split sheet, sign it, and at least you have that kind of introductory document that you can then push through the process, and it'll guide the rest of the, because a split sheet is great, but you also need more of a comprehensive collaboration agreement or
Yep.
a full long form producer agreement. But
Hmm.
that split sheet will guide what's
That.
in those other contracts. So um, everybody should be using split sheets all the time in the studio. I go to studios around town and I
Hmm.
drop them off. Like I'll print out a stack and be like, here,
That's
like take
smart.
these,
Yeah.
start using them. If you don't know what a split sheet looks like, or you need help with one, like email me. I will send you one for free. Like I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make money off of split sheets. Like I want you guys to have them and use them because it makes my life easier down the line. It makes your life easier, and it avoids so much conflict if you just get the split sheet in
Hmm.
writing. Like I said, before you leave the session.
Yeah. Yeah. And on the sort of split sheet, because I put it on the split sheet. I didn't have it in Disco. Going back to Disco, the conversation I had with the sync library owner, I would put like the writer's info, PRO, publisher PRO, and I would leave it at that. And he was like, so who owns the master? And I just always assumed that never assume that people assume.
You're right,
But
right.
I was just like the master is basically the same as the writer stuff. Like if it's two writers, we both split the master. He's like, I don't see that on there. It's like, oh man, okay, I'll add it to it. So like have everything like clearly written out, and even if it's in your head, it's like, yeah, we all agree to this. Even with the artist that I collaborate with, she just wanted to confirm because I just sent in some covers. She was like, hey, what's the split on these covers again?
Yeah.
Um, and so just making sure that everything is and do it up front because sometimes you don't want to have a great song and then all of a sudden, the artist is like, "Oh no, I thought I was getting 70% of this thing." And
Exactly.
then you have a great
Exactly.
song
Yeah.
that you spent all this time on. Um, and it's
Yeah.
like, man, now the song is basically dead in the water.
You
Um,
got to make sure expectations are aligned, and that's
yeah.
that's the key. And that's why I say to do it while you're in the session, because people, as soon as they leave that session and they go back to their life, and they remember things. Everybody remembers things very differently. So they're like,
Yeah.
I thought you said 70%, and now you're
No.
saying 50%, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
you know
Especially if it becomes like a hit song or a big theme or yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And then you have people coming out the woodwork who are like, "Oh, I added this symbol over here, or this
Mm.
snare, or I did this, or I was in the studio and told you to change this word to that word." And are you on the split sheet? No,
Yeah.
well, then sorry, bro. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so
And on that note, should artists get like uh additional protection in the form of LLC what is it, corporation type
yeah, yeah.
registration, or should they just remain artists and sign these deals? And what's the
No,
benefits of going that route?
every artist should have their own LLC.
Mm,
Producers should have their own LLC. I think everybody should have one. If you're doing business with other people, you should probably have an LLC. And that's just for liability reasons. Like if you get sued because of something that you did through your LLC, they sue the LLC. They don't sue you as a person.
okay.
So having that separation is important, but you also need to really have separation. So like
Yeah.
without getting into a whole business formations law class here, but like
Yeah.
you need to keep your business assets separate from your personal assets. You need to have a
Hmm.
separate bank account. You need to have the money that you're getting from these producer fees or whatever going into that bank account, and you know you
Hmm.
can take the money out as at your leisure and move it to your personal account, but you want
Hmm.
that flow of the money to
Coming
be
in. Yeah.
separate, and that'll really help you in case there's a situation down the line. And it also has a lot of tax benefits too. As
Yeah.
a, if you have an LLC, there's a lot more stuff that you can write off, as an LLC owner versus as a sole proprietor, so
Yeah.
that can help come tax time. So definitely, you know, form an LLC if you can. It's pretty easy in most states, but you can hire a lawyer to do it as well, or, um,
Mhm.
you know, work with somebody to get it done. But definitely, if you're taking money and giving money for business purposes, you should probably have an LLC.
Yeah. And to what extent on those sort of benefits? Because let's say I know some people that obviously it used to be, and I know laws changing. I think there was an increase, so that might have been one improvement from the current administration. We won't get into a political talk, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a tax benefit as a music creator, where I'm in my music room right now. This room is only used for me to create music.
yep,
I used to be able to write off this percentage of the space of this house as the business side, or um, if you go to movies, I sit through the credits and I listen to the music, I listen to soundtracks. Could that be sort of, or is that too loose? Obviously, if I go to a conference like South by Southwest, can that whole trip, because it's all business related, the
yeah.
flight, the hotel, the Ubers, the food, all be written off? Plugins, things like that. To what extent is there a limit, or
Yeah,
based
so
on
so
current law?
so I'm not an accountant. So,
Okay.
a lot of these are questions for an accountant or a CPA.
Mhm.
But, from what I understand, yeah, you can write off,
Yeah.
up to a certain amount, pretty much anything, even your equipment, the mics and things that you're buying, and,
Mhm.
recording costs now. And that was the recent law that came through, that,
Yep.
now artists can
Oh,
write
yeah.
off their recording costs. Um, I can't remember the exact amount
Yeah.
you can write off to off the top of my head, but it's much more significant than it used to be.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember either. I want to say it might be over 100,000 or at 100,000, but I think it was up
Yeah,
there somewhere.
it's up
So
there. Like,
yeah,
you could probably put in a good dent on your tax return if you did it.
if you spend that much,
If you spend that much.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Or even gas mileage, and
Yeah,
things like
no,
that.
I go to a few concerts a week. I
Mhm.
spend, a few nights a week at different recording studios.
Mhm.
I write off all that gas mileage myself, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah, yeah. That,
So,
that's smart. Can you write off, like, let's say you're doing uh a talk like at a college or university.
yeah.
Let's say you have a normal speaking rate of $1,000, whatever. And do you write off that if you do it for free, pro bono, or how do you,
Yeah, I would write off that,
yeah,
any expenses involved with that for
yeah,
sure, you know.
yeah,
Um, I mean, like I said, I keep really good records, and
yeah.
I try to write off anything that's business related, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, now with the technology we have, it's just easy. You go to a restaurant or you go on a trip,
Yep.
screenshot the receipt. You can save it in certain folders on your phone, or there's apps that'll save, your business stuff and business things,
Yep.
and you can track everything for the year. Because one thing that you can't mess with is the IRS. They
Yeah.
will hunt you down,
That
even if
is
it's 10 years later. They will find you,
that
um,
is true. That is true.
no
Yeah.
matter
And
where
and
you
and
are.
get yourself a good accountant, you know.
Yeah.
There are a lot that are specific to the music business, actually, I
Hmm.
can recommend some folks who do just music business clients, but
Hmm.
even if you just have a general small business accountant, it's going to be a lot better than trying to figure this out on your own.
And that's a good point, because some people do confuse like lawyer with accountant, or they think it's the same thing. And it's like, hey, I have a
Yeah.
lawyer. They help me handle the business and mine. It's like, not exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't like handling your
mhm.
actual money. I like getting you money, and
Yeah.
making sure you get to keep your money, but when it comes to taxes and figuring all that out, that's beyond my expertise.
Yeah, yeah. So there definitely you want to have that team, lawyer. Some people have a business manager, which is also
Right.
separate from an accountant, but also keep in mind having these sort of, a lot of these can be percentages off of deals that you have. So if you're giving
Right, right.
10% to everyone, you can only hire 10 people on your team and you're not getting
You're
anything.
right.
So you got to make
Right,
sure.
right.
make sure
Yep.
you're doing those checks and balances, or go the route that I know a lot of major artists have started doing. Instead of doing percentages, they would just pay them like a retainer or pay them outright
Yeah.
or as a one-off based on business needs as they need it.
Yeah.
So there's different levels to this. I know we're going a little over time. I have one more question that I want to ask you about
Sure.
sort of, or two questions. One is going to be uh how do you see sort of the legal landscape changing? I would say 5 to 10 years, but I mean, who knows what the world's going to be like at that time? But let's say over the
Yeah.
next year, 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, I think the legal landscape, for music is changing the same way the industry, I think, is changing, and that's that the power is shifting to the independents, and
Mhm,
that's not just independent artists, but independent labels, independent distributors, just companies that aren't owned by the few majors.
mhm.
And I think that the power is shifting to the independents, and artists are realizing that they don't always need the infrastructure of a major label to reach their goals.
Yeah,
So I think the legal landscape's going to change. Like I said, I my focus is on independent artists. Like, yes, some of my artists end up signing to major labels, but for the most part, I work with independent music, and I think there's going to be more attorneys that are doing the same thing that I'm doing in that sense. Because the independent sector is just becoming a bigger and bigger piece of the pie every single day you
yeah,
know
yeah,
and I think as more tools come out, as more services and things, they're going to empower the artists to be able to do this on their own without, like I said, having that structure of a major label.
yeah, yeah.
So that's where I see it going.
This is sort of like a part two. Is there an AI application for the legal side of things? Like I've heard of people putting contracts into AI and say, "Hey, tell me what
Yes.
this is about." Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So that definitely be careful with that, especially with
yeah,
ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is wrong a lot. You know, it really is.
yeah,
Like, especially when it comes to analyzing contracts and
mhm,
I've had ChatGPT. Your people tell me, like, oh, I ran the contract through ChatGPT and it said this, and it's like,
mhm.
well, which one of us has a law degree, right? Me or ChatGPT? And
Yeah,
and there are, I get ads for them all the time. There are these like
legal
legal
AI. Yeah.
specific AI platforms that are coming out.
Mhm,
Um, I also think that there's some attorney client privilege issues with some of that.
mhm.
Like,
Yep,
a lot of my clients, a lot of my deals are confidential, and
yep.
clients wouldn't like their names and the particulars of their deals spit into an AI
The AI.
platform,
Yeah.
an AI model. So I don't use it for contracts like that, but I
Mhm.
definitely use ChatGPT from time to time to, um, you know, tighten up some email language or
Oh yeah, yeah,
tools like that. Writing tools and
yeah.
helping me frame things, or if somebody has a very specific question, like somebody earlier today there was a question about what's called a side protection,
Mhm.
which
Hmm.
I don't want to go into the whole thing, but it's
Okay.
like it's a very specific clause in producer contracts that has to do with side A, side B singles,
Yep.
and the how the royalties are split for those. Somebody asked me what side A protection was. Rather than me like diving into the whole thing, I just
Yeah.
asked ChatGPT, what is side A protection? It gave me a decent answer, and I worked off that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's helpful to save time, but if you're just asking it to create legal documents for you
Oh
or
yeah.
analyze legal documents, it's not going to look good for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say with the AI, definitely do not upload like briefs. Do
Yes,
not do
and
not
personal
personal,
information.
definitely
Yeah,
not your social
yep,
security. Even if
yep,
you
yep.
I work in technology. So by day I work at National Geographic, and I work in
Oh, cool.
technology. So even if a platform says that they are not, you turn off whatever,
Right.
they're not looking at your information, you have it on incognito mode, whatever you want to call it, of
Whatever. Yeah.
ChatGPT. There are still ways for them to access it. I mean, I would say there's probably 1% of technology companies that when they say they can't access it, they really can't.
Yeah.
Uh,
I don't
yeah,
I don't trust any company.
yeah, but yeah,
So,
yeah,
and people get hacked, servers get hacked, things happen, it's like
yeah,
the, you know,
yeah. Even if you're
uh,
offline, even if you're offline and you're using like the offline version of ChatGPT, as soon as you all of our devices are connected for the most
Yep.
part. As soon as it, pings off one device and updates or whatever, yeah, it's so just be careful what you're putting on there. I do use it as well for, cleaning up text. I actually used it yesterday to land a studio sponsorship for a writing camp we're doing in Sydney in a couple weeks
Hey.
as part of South by Southwest Sydney. So I use it to help me,
Oh, amazing.
um, you
Amazing.
know, source partners and sponsors and things, and I use it to, brain dump, ideas for
Yeah.
things that I'm working on and
Oh
artwork
yeah.
prompts. I use it for everything but music
Right,
creation,
right.
music creation. I
No,
do use it for mixing and things like that,
it's
or
really
mastering.
helpful. It's really helpful for marketing
Oh
stuff and
yeah,
writing
yeah.
like, copy and captions and things like that. But, you know, it's not a replacement for a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And on the other side, there's people who do the marketing and captions who say it's not a replacement for that. So I get
Sure. No,
both
no,
sides of
I
the
get it.
equation. Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
yeah.
you know, there's I think people are always going to be better than the AI. I hope, unless, unless we get into a
Yeah.
Terminator 2 Judgment Day
No, I think
situation, you know.
I think our age is in that space where people, we put a value on people. I think uh, you know, um the grandkid generation to us, but
Right.
they're going to be a
That
whole
could be
different
could be
story,
very
a
different.
whole different
Yeah.
story. So,
Yeah.
I was in Atlanta or last month. We were moving our daughter into college at Spelman and had my first Uber Waymo pick me up. I didn't choose
Oh
it. It was an
yeah.
option.
It
It
just
was like
yeah,
it was
yeah,
the
yeah.
quickest option. I was like, I had to get to where I was going, and I told my wife as I was leaving the Airbnb, I was like, I think I have a Waymo. I don't think there's gonna be a driver in this car. And like,
Yeah.
I recorded the whole experience.
It's kind of freaky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, man, I hope it gets me to the right place. I hope it doesn't get in an accident. And I was
Right,
like,
right.
man, like if it does, what are the legal, what happens there?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, but I made it, obviously. So yeah, there's things happening. One final question for you. You gave a lot of advice here, like that don't upload to ChatGPT and every artist should get an LLC. But if you could leave one sort of legal tip to every artist, especially ones who are in sync or trying to get into sync, just one uh, legal tip, not legal advice, consult a lawyer.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah.
what would it be?
No, I'm going to echo something I said earlier, but I think it's worth repeating. But split sheets, split sheets, split sheets, split sheets, split sheets. If you get anything out of this conversation, it's to use them, because especially with sync, you need to be very clear about who owns what and what rights people have. So, do split sheets at the very least. If you should go the step further and do a collab agreement or a producer agreement, but I understand not everybody has those resources. The very least, do a split sheet.
Yeah,
So, if, like I said, if you learn anything from this
use a
conversation,
split sheet.
the
And
importance of split sheets.
at that independent level, because if for some reason someone finds themselves in a room with a Taylor Swift or Beyonce, would
Right.
it be awkward to say, "Hey, Beyonce, here's a split sheet"? Like, wait, she's like
I'm assuming somebody in that room is going to pull out a split
at
sheet,
that some point, yeah,
at that level. But you'd be
yeah,
surprised. I've
yeah,
I've had situations where that wasn't the case, and it can really, again, without getting into
yeah.
specifics, I have a client who was a producer on a song, very popular hit over the summer. The
Mhm.
song now has, I want to say 200 million streams, somewhere around there.
Ooh,
It's like if I said the name, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know that song." You know what I mean? But
wow.
it's we're still arguing over who has what
Okay,
percentage because there's no split sheet involved. And I mean, 240 million streams is
yeah,
not, you know,
yeah.
it's
That's what
nothing to
like
scoff at.
that's what at
You know?
least $25, right? For Spotify.
Yeah, yeah. It's at least a Big Mac. It's
Yeah.
the Big Mac combo right there. So yeah,
Wow,
that
yeah, that's
can.
great.
Yeah, but the song's been out for almost a year, and
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure
Dealing.
out who gets what. If there was a split sheet from the very beginning, it would already be done. Everybody would be collecting their royalties, and there wouldn't
Hmm.
be nearly the issues that they're having now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we can keep going because that's bringing up questions about these shows like Hitbikers and
Yeah, yeah.
building the band, but that'll be a part two conversation.
Part two, yeah. I'll come on. I'll come back. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere.
It's going to be a different conversation, like in even 6 months from now, because this AI
It,
stuff and
yeah,
yeah, the industry changes rapidly.
it really
Um,
does.
But yeah, Randy, thank you for your time. Let people know how they can follow you. I'll also put this in the description of the YouTube video when I get it posted up. But how can they
Yeah,
follow you? Website, Instagram, LinkedIn, social media, all of the things, the
sure.
Discord, all email, whatever you want to put out there.
I, as you said, all the things. So yeah, my website is randyojeda.law.com. You can go on there and book consultations with me directly through the site. You can also follow me on. I'm mostly on Instagram at real Randy Ojeda. Don't follow the fake Randy Ojeda. Follow the real Randy Ojeda. That's me. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, Randy Ojeda. Real Randy Ojeda on Facebook. On Threads. I'm on X, which makes me sound like I'm on drugs, but yeah, I'm on there. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on everything, and
Yeah,
I try to get the same username, real Randy Ojeda,
right.
on all the things. So,
Yeah,
um, you know,
that's smart.
I try to be as accessible as possible. So please reach out to me. Don't be shy. If you want to join our Discord community, we'd love to have you. So reach out to me. I'll give you a private link to that, and you can join and ask questions and get to know me, get to know the community, and be part of things.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm not on X, so I left X earlier this year, not because of
Sure.
the owner, but I didn't get a lot of opportunities from it. And I'm sort of thinking of leaving TikTok. I'll probably stick with TikTok.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm on TikTok too. I
Yeah,
forget.
there's so many platforms.
So many platforms, and
Uh,
and yeah, and I'm on some more than others, but
yeah,
I try to at least maintain a presence because every now and then somebody will DM me on
yeah,
Twitter or X, and you
yeah,
know, it is what it is.
yeah, yeah. Such as life, and then whatever else
Which
comes
is
out
life.
over the next 6 months,
I'm
um,
sure. I'm sure
there'll
there'll
be
be more.
more.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time. We will end this conversation. Be sure to check out the links in the description to connect with Randy, and I will see you on the next episode. All right. Be safe and be well, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Peace. Thank you.